Imagine if, in a single generation, our modern world just stopped working. Not because of one disaster, but because the very system that it was built on started to fall apart. Well, this happened in about 1200 BC, and we call it the Bronze Age collapse. At this point in history, the Eastern Mediterranean is highly organised and interconnected, but very fragile. The Mycenaean Greeks lived in palace-centred states and relied on written records, long-distance trade and central authority. The Hittite Empire controlled large territory in Turkey and initiated in diplomacy as equals with the Egyptians. And along the Eastern Mediterranean coast, places like Ugarit acted like economic hubs, connecting Asia with Africa and the Eastern Mediterranean. And then, within a few decades, it all fell apart. Across the region, archaeologists find the same repeated pattern. Palaces are burnt and they're never rebuilt. Major cities were violently destroyed and then abandoned. In Greece, when the Mycenaean palaces burned, it meant centuries of illiteracy after. The Hittite capital was destroyed, and the empire vanished so completely that it was only when modern archaeologists discovered it that we even found out about its existence. Even Egypt, one of the most resilient and stable states of the age, recorded years of crisis and very nearly collapsed itself. So the obvious question is, how did this happen? The only near contemporary information that we have comes from Egypt, and they describe groups attacking called the Sea Peoples. These groups enter the historical record very quickly. They arrive by sea, bringing their families, and they attack. They leave destruction behind them, and then, as quickly as they arrived, they vanish. It's very easy for us to just blame them for everything, but that doesn't really hold up. When we look closely at the evidence, we see that these societies were already under immense strain. The Bronze Age world relied heavily on these long, intricate supply networks. Food, weapons and raw materials are constantly crossing across borders, and states relied on this uninterrupted trade to survive. Evidence from the time period suggests prolonged droughts and incredibly poor harvests. Cities like Ugarit are begging for grain, and it just never arrives. So grain, as the base for all trading networks, starts to become scarcer and trade breaks down. Once food shortages, economic stress and political unrest all start to kick in, governments can no longer respond to a crisis. No matter how small, they become catastrophic. And in that context, raids became invasions, migrations became destabilizing forces, and cities that might once have recovered collapsed. What looks like coordinated destruction might actually be a huge migration wave of people that are forced to fight and raid to survive.